Hi, it's Steph, and we're at Walmart. And we've made it to March, friends, and spring is on the way. And Walmart has received their inventory of spring planted, summer blooming bare root bulbs. There's a mix of annuals as well as perennials, and some of these are actually a really great buy. So let's go ahead and take a look at what they've got. Gladiola. I know a lot of you love these, and I've grown them in the past. They look really great up against a fence or somewhere where they can be supported because they do get pretty tall. They make great cut flowers, and in some cases, even though they're listed as an annual, they do come back. I had some that came back for a couple of years in a row, and then in subsequent years I just got foliage. But you want to plant them at an 8-inch depth, and they get to be anywhere from 4 to 5 feet in height. It says that they are hardy in zones 8 through 10, so if you are in a warmer region, then chances are they will continue to return for you. But they're a beautiful, just traditional cottage garden flower. $3.46, you're getting 8 bulbs. And caladiums. Now, there was one particular season a couple of years back where caladiums were actually difficult to find in bare root bulbs, but they seem to be back. Last year there was quite a few, and this year I'm starting to see them again. These are a beautiful foliage plant to light up a shady spot. They work wonderfully in containers, and you're getting 3 bulbs here for $3.46, and this is a mixed batch, but they do have really beautiful foliage. Hollyhocks. These are another quintessential cottage garden flower. It looks like you're getting 2 bare root hollyhocks for $3.46. These are listed as perennials. Any hollyhock that I've grown typically is either an annual variety or a biennial, which means that once you start it, it will grow foliage and roots in year 1, and then you'll get these beautiful blooms in year 2. The good thing about buying bare roots is that they've already done their initial root growth, so you could put them in the ground and get blooms in the first year. Now, you might be wondering, seeing these at the store, can I plant these now? Any variety that is perennial, if your soil is thawed and workable, yes, you can plant them out at any point. However, there are some annuals in here, like dahlias, for example, that you would want to wait until your soil temperature warms up and you don't have any more chance of frost before you plant those. And I'll show you as we go along, but I just wanted to tell you that in case you get excited and you want to go out and shop for some bare root plants, you would have a good idea of what you can plant now and what you should wait on. Look at this beautiful variety of hollyhock. It is a yellow variety. They look like little rosettes. Just gorgeous. Now, hollyhocks are susceptible to something called rust on their foliage, and that is more prevalent if you have them packed tightly where they're not getting proper air circulation, and also if there's a lot of moisture. So say you have a really rainy season or you're overhead watering, that could be a way to cause the leaves to get rust. So just something to be aware of. This one does bloom in summer, and it gets to be 60 to 84 inches in height. So you definitely want to support these, stake them up so they don't topple over in the wind, and they need full sun in order to perform best. It does have them listed as perennial down to a zone 3 or negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, here is a perennial that I did start from these bulbs here, the bare roots, and it is liatris, also known as gay feather and blazing star. This is a wonderful pollinator attracting perennial. It is a tall spike shaped bloom, and the pollinators absolutely love it. I have bees and butterflies all over these when they bloom for me at some point in July in my zone 6B, 7A. Now, this perennial is hardy down to a zone 2 or negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so super hardy. And it looks like you get 4 bulbs for $3.46. Now, I always think it's a good idea to look at the bulbs when you're purchasing these. You want to give them a little gentle squeeze to make sure that they're not rotted and that they're nice and firm. Even better if they have little signs of growth like that. You can see there's a little bit of green coming up, which shows that it's viable. So that's something I like to do whenever I buy a bare root bulb. But this one I would certainly recommend. And Asiatic lilies. Now, there's a few varieties of lilies. There's the Asiatic, the Oriental lilies. They bloom at different times. They're usually generally different heights as well. So this Asiatic is a little bit shorter in stature. So this variety is a mix. It looks like you get some white, some red, and some orange. And it says to plant 3 bulbs per square foot at a 6-inch depth. They do like sun to part sun, and this height is 32 to 36 inches. So about 2.5 to 3 feet in height on these Asiatic. Some of them are a little bit shorter, but you'll find that the Oriental lilies get upwards of 4 feet in height usually. And so these are a great perennial. I do find that the deer sometimes like them in my garden, so I tend to have to spray the buds once they start swelling up like this, but I love them. They come back every year, so great investment for this one. Only $3.46 for 3 bulbs. And speaking of lilies, here are some more. These are actually daylilies, so they're different than the Asiatic and the Oriental lilies. The cool thing about daylilies is that each flower only lasts a day, hence the name daylily. But the deer also really like these, and sometimes the foliage can get quite unsightly after they're done blooming, but all you have to do is cut that foliage right back, and then it'll flush out with new growth and look fresh again. So that is actually pretty minimal maintenance on these. They spread pretty easily. They're a great perennial if you want to divide and grow your garden. And this here, you get a mixed bag of daylilies, 2 plants per pack for $3.46. This variety just says mixed, and the height on it is, let's see, 14 to 16 inches. So because it is pretty short, you'd want this one in the front of a border. And it's pretty hardy, zones 2 through 9. Daylilies also come in early season, mid-season, and late season bloomers. So if you like daylilies, you can buy some in each of those categories to extend the amount of time that you get daylilies blooming in your garden. Here's another really popular variety, the Stella d'Oro. It is a golden yellow color daylily. These actually look beautifully paired with things like nepetas and salvia in that purple color. Because they're opposite on the color wheel, they look beautiful together. And this variety gets to be 10 to 12 inches in height, and it is also hardy in zones 2 through 9. So this is a great front of the border plant. And another one of my favorites are coneflowers or echinacea. Now, coneflowers, I have a lot of the Echinacea purpurea, which is a native variety. These are a pollinator magnet. The bees and butterflies just love them. And if you leave them up over the winter, the goldfinches will feed on their seeds and all of the other birds as well. So really great plant to have in the garden. They do not like a wet soil. They like a dry, well-draining soil, occasional moisture, of course. All flowers need some water, but they don't want to sit in wet soil. That's the fastest way to rot these. And they also want full sun. I do find that they are deer resistant, but sometimes the bunnies will chew on the lower leaves and some of the lower buds. So something to be aware of. But in general, this is a really great garden perennial. And you get 2 bulbs for $3.46. When you get home, you would just want to dump these out in a bucket or some kind of bowl and look for the bare roots. You can see right there, there's some growth, meaning that it's viable. And if your soil is workable, you can go ahead and plant these out in the garden, and they'll start pushing out their new green growth once the weather warms up. Here is another beautiful variety of Oriental lilies. I actually have these in my garden. It's a mix, and you get light pinks and some with this speckling in the center with darker veining. So these are like stargazer mix lilies is what I think they're called, and just gorgeous. So here you get 3 bulbs for $3.46, and you want to plant them about 6 inches in depth. They like full sun to part sun. They bloom in the summer, and this variety gets to be 36 to 48 inches in height and hardy in zones 3 through 9. These are super hardy. Here's one that I have also started from bare root before. In fact, I bought a pack just like this several years ago, and it's done beautifully. This is Eurangium. The variety is Blue Star, and it is beautiful. Look at that unique bloom. Now, it's sort of like a thistle. It is a little bit spiky to the touch, but you get 2 here for $5.42. Very easy to grow from bare root. You can actually see that there's already some growth in there, so that shows that it's a viable bare root bulb. And this one gets to be pretty tall. I usually have to stake mine. I put a tomato cage around it, and that works pretty well. They get 28 to 32 inches in height, hardy in zones 3 through 9, and you want to plant 1 bulb per square foot. So this is essentially 2 plants. Mine is actually large enough to be able to divide at this point, but I just love the color and the unique shape of these blooms. And peonies. Now, this is one that I would either buy or skip. It depends how much patience you have when it comes to growing peonies from bare root, because it can take several years for a bare root peony to bloom for you, because it's going to depend on how many eyes it has. So this, you get 1 plant. This is the Margaret Truman variety for $5.42. Several years ago, I had bought a few of these bare root peony plants. I want to say we're going on 5 years now, and they're just starting to get up to a good size. So it's definitely a time commitment, and the number of eyes will determine how many blooms you have. I can see one eye in there. Can you see that? So it's a viable tuber or bare root. It would work. It'll just take you a little while before you get blooms. You might just get foliage for a couple of years. But if you're patient, you can actually amass a pretty good collection of peonies on a pretty low budget. This one is gorgeous. I actually grew this one from bare root, and it's performed beautifully for me. $5.42. It's the Coral Sunset. It's a large bloom, and it goes through several color changes. It will start this really beautiful deep salmon color, then it ages to this more peachy color, and then it'll go even cream before it is done. Very pretty. Now, most peonies will get about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide over time. Some varieties get slightly bigger, but the thing to know about these herbaceous peony varieties is that they do need staking. Because the flowers are so large, once they start blooming, if they're really heavy, they could flop over a little bit, and especially if it rains. So good idea to give them some support. This is another beautiful one that I have in my garden. The peony sorbet. This one has a more open center with some pink and some cream. Really beautiful. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, and it gets to be 28 to 36 inches in height. And you want to plant 1 per square foot. And you're getting 1 bulb in here. And always just kind of feel around for the bare root. Make sure it's nice and firm. And look at that, signs of growth. So that's always a good sign. Hostas are another great perennial that you can buy with bare root, and they work really well. I've grown several of these bare root varieties. In year 1, they're pretty small. By year 2, they're pretty good size, and by year 3, you can even divide them. And you get 2 plants here for $5.42. This looks like a variegated variety. It's a very common hosta variety, but this would also work really great in a container. They're super hardy, down to a zone 3, all the way up to a zone 9. The deer do like them, so if you deal with deer, something to be aware of. And this is a short variety at 16 to 18 inches in height. They bloom midsummer. Now, hostas do bloom. They send up a bloom stalk with sometimes a light purple or white bell-shaped flowers that the pollinators really like. If you like the flowers, you can keep them up. Otherwise, you could just cut them down at the base. But this is a really easy perennial. And if your soil is workable, you can even plant them out now. And another that I have a lot of experience growing from bare root is astilbe. Now, if you deal with shade, but you want to have some beautiful blooms, astilbe is a great plant. 2 things about growing astilbe. It does like a soil that leans moist in order for it to perform best. And I find that in order to get these gorgeous full plume type blooms, you should feed it. It's a hungry plant. So every late winter, early spring, I go through and I feed it with some granular all-purpose plant fertilizer. Something like a plant tone would work just fine, and they do really well for me. Usually they bloom at the end of June, beginning of July. And I have several varieties that I bought like this in bare root, and you're getting 2 plants for $5.42. This variety is called Phenol, which looks to be like a rosy red. And you can see here that there is already some growth. They do have ferny foliage. Very pretty plant. The more I look around, the more good perennials I'm finding. Look at this, garden phlox. Now, when it comes to phlox, there are several varieties. In the early spring, you have the ground cover type phloxes. There's also woodland phloxes that do better in the shade. And then there's the garden phlox that comes in several heights and also bloom at different times. Now, this looks like a summer mix phlox in shades of pink and white. And you get 3 plants for $5.42, which is a great deal. And you can see that there's some active growth going on in there. Because it is perennial, it's going to be very hardy, and if your soil is workable, you can go ahead and plant these out now. It's hardy in zones 4 through 8, and this variety gets to be 30 to 36 inches in height and blooms late spring through early summer. So with phlox, you definitely want to give them ample room because some of the older varieties are susceptible to something called powdery mildew on the foliage. So you want to make sure that you have proper airflow around the plant to kind of minimize the chances of that happening. But this is a really great garden perennial, and for $5.42, you're getting 3 plants. So I would certainly recommend that as a pickup. And then here we have some spring blooming perennials. And this is the first time that I'm seeing a white bare root here at Walmart. This is a bleeding heart, also known as dicentra. The white is called alba, and then they also have the traditional pink variety. These are what I like to call a statement perennial. Typically, you want to plant perennials in groups of multiples, 3, 5, and so forth, because they look better in what they call a drift or a grouping. But because these tend to get so large over time, you only need one of them. It's a good standalone perennial. They can get upwards of 3 feet in height and in width over time. So this white variety, you're getting 2 plants for $5.42, and each one gets to be 28 to 36 inches in height and in width, and they're hardy in zones 2 through 9, so very hardy. And they do well, honestly, in part sun to part shade. I find that the ones that are planted in more sun tend to do better. And this is typically known as a shade plant. So while I do think it does okay in shade, I think it can handle more sun than they're known to handle. And the pink variety gets to also be 28 to 36 inches in height and in width, hardy in zones 2 through 9. Look how beautiful that is. They literally look like little hearts that opened up and are bleeding, hence the name Bleeding Hearts. Now here is one that I would caution you about. This is Lily of the Valley, and while some people really like the fragrance of these little bell-shaped sweet flowers, they are usually used as a ground cover, but they can get pretty invasive and get carried away and spread pretty fast. So if you were to plant these in your garden, maybe I would start with a container and do a little bit of research to see whether or not they are an invasive type plant in your area before you plant them anywhere in the landscape. But they are hardy in zones 2 through 9. They get to be 4 to 6 inches in height. They bloom in spring, and you plant 1 per square foot at a depth of 1 inch. They're probably a pretty small bulb, and you can see that there's already some growth on this one here. And look at this, the Alsia rosea black hollyhock. This is a really beautiful variety. $3.46, you get 2 of them. It is listed as perennial, and this one also gets pretty tall at 60 to 84 inches in height. These mixed in with some fox gloves, oh, they just look beautiful. I love these tall flowers in a cottage garden setting. Here's another excellent perennial that I love in my garden. It is Nephophia, also known as red hot poker, and this variety is Alcazar. You can see that it is a spike type bloom, and it has like this gradient or ombre color effect. It starts off one color at the top, and then it kind of gradually fades to another color at the bottom. It has a tubular shaped petal, which the hummingbirds absolutely love. And what's great about this perennial is that even when it doesn't have these bloom spikes on them, the plant has it's like a tuft of ornamental grass. So the foliage looks like a grassy texture. So even when not in bloom, it's a really cool looking, just tidy looking plant. And you get 1 plant for $3.46. And when it does have its bloom stalks on it, it gets to be 40 to 48 inches in height. You want to plant 1 per square foot, and very hardy in zones 6 through 10. Dutch iris, you get 10 bulbs of the Hollandica mix Dutch iris, and these are a short stature. Well, actually they're 20 to 24 inches in height, hardy in zones 5 through 10. You want to plant 6 per square foot at a 3-inch depth, and they bloom in early summer. And then they also have these rain lilies. Very sweet looking. You get 12 of them for $3.46, and these you can do 12 bulbs per square foot, 6 to 10 inches in height, hardy in zones 7 through 11. So for us here, these would be borderline just an annual. You get 12 for $3.46. And here is another really beautiful annual. It is ranunculus. Now these, I do think you need to start a little bit early indoors because they are a spring bloomer that likes cooler temperatures. As soon as the summer gets here and it's too hot, they don't do as well. And what's cool about them is that the corms look like these little bunches of bananas. And before you plant them, you do want to rehydrate them by putting them in a bowl of water for about 12 to 24 hours before you plant them. Then you can kind of put them in some soil until they sprout, and at that point you can plant them into little containers with potting soil, and let them grow for a bit before you plant them out into the garden. And you can plant them out this spring after you harden them off for a little bit. I mean, you can plant them directly out in the garden. I just don't know how well they'll do. In my experience, they do better with a little indoor head start. But you get 10 corms for $3.46. You missed the pink hollyhocks, but you also get 2 for $3.46. Those are beautiful. And what else do they have here? Some Blanda mix anemones and some freesias double mixed. You get 10 bulbs of the freesia for $3.46, and you get 15 bulbs of the Blanda anemones for $3.46. And then they have some Sparaxis mixed, 20 bulbs for $3.46. And then down here, oh my goodness, this is a good one. I actually grow this every year from seed because I'm trying to grow the amount that I have in my garden. I love them. I grow the Blue Glow Globe Thistle. This is the Vichi's Blue, and you get 2 bulbs for $3.46. And you can see the bare roots there. There's actually some shoots already, so that is a great sign. Beautiful. I'm actually going to pick this one up today and plant them out in my garden. It's perennial, so as soon as my snow melts and the soil is workable, I will go ahead and put these in. Now, these get to be 36 to 40 inches in height. They bloom summer through fall, and you want to plant 1 bulb per square foot. Hardy, very hardy, zones 2 through 9. Some tiger lilies, and you get 3 bulbs for $5.42. These have a nodding or a downward facing habit, and you want to plant them at a depth of 6 inches. They like full sun to part sun, 3 per square foot, bloom in summer, hardy in zones 3 through 9, and they get to be 36 to 40 inches in height. And lots of pretty dahlias. This variety is the Kogen Fubuki. Now, something to note about the dahlias is that even though they're selling them right now in early spring, in most areas, these should not be planted out until you have no more chance of frost and the soil has warmed up a bit and your temperatures are above 50 degrees regularly. Because these do like warm soil temperatures. If you planted them out now, if they're sitting in cold, wet soil, there's a chance that they'll rot before they even get going. So that is what you should do with dahlia tubers. Now, these get to be 36 to 40 inches in height, and they're hardy in zones 8 through 10. Here in my zone, these are annuals for us unless you dig them up and store them over the winter. But if you're in a zone 8 and above, you can keep them in the ground and they will likely return for you if they're happy where they are. But they generally do need staking because they get pretty tall. But what a beautiful garden you will have towards the end of summer with these beautiful blooms. They're a later bloomer too. So just as your garden starts to get tired, all of these dahlias show up and give you a beautiful show. This one is called Babylon Red, and you get 2 bulbs for $5.42. Now, what I would recommend with the dahlias is definitely looking at the tubers, gently squeezing them. This one right here feels soft to me, so I would pass on that. Another thing that sometimes you find with these big box store dahlias is that they're more susceptible to something called gall, which is a disease that dahlias get. So you certainly want to inspect those tubers carefully when you get them, just to make sure that they're healthy. This one feels a bit heavier, this bag, so just by the weight you can tell that the tubers are nice and plump and in good shape. And then of course, when you see signs of growth like that, you know that they're viable. This is the Fire and Ice Dahlia. It looks like a thinner, more dainty dahlia, not as showy as some of these other ruffly ones, right? So this one here is also shorter, 18 to 24 inches in height, hardy in zones 8 through 10, and blooms summer through fall. So this could be a good front of the border dahlia or even a container plant. And some cannas, a beautiful tropical annual for your patios. This looks gorgeous, like around a swimming pool, just to give you that vibe like you're on vacation, right? You get 3 plants for $5.42. This is a red variety. Kind of looks more orange to me, but these get to be 32 to 48 inches in height. If you are going to put them in a container, you want to make sure it's a substantial enough container that holds enough soil that it won't topple over with the height of these in them, especially if it gets a little bit windy. But these are a really pretty tropical annual. Here's a really popular dahlia variety that I actually bought from a specialty grower a few years ago. It didn't do that well for me, but it has such a beautiful, dark, deep color. $5.42, you get 2 bulbs of the Rip City Dahlia. This feels like a pretty heavy tuber. The tubers are pretty firm, so that's a good sign. And you want to also look for some eyes or growth points to show that it's viable. But I did notice there looks like there's a little bit of mold in there, so I would probably pass on this one and look for another. Another gorgeous lily. This is the Landini. Now, there is a garden color trend this year for goth style gardens, which means dark, moody flowers, deep burgundies, deep purples, and even black flowers. So if you are into that kind of trend, or even just like a moody flower, this is a really good pickup. The Landini Asiatic Lily. It is perennial, and you get 4 bulbs for $5.42. And these get to be 36 to 40 inches in height, and they're hardy in zones 2 through 9. You can plant 3 bulbs per square foot at a depth of 6 inches, and they like part sun to full sun. And I have these beauties in my garden, and in July, what a beautiful show. They are the Casablanca lilies. Not only are they gorgeous, but they are so fragrant. They smell absolutely amazing. The scent is intoxicating in that summer air. I just love them. And they get pretty tall, 36 to 48 inches in height, and they're hardy in zones 4 through 9. You want to plant 3 bulbs per square foot at a depth of 6 inches, and they like full sun to part sun. I do find that I have to offer these a little bit of support with some of those half circle stakes in order for them to stay nice and upright, because they're a very heavy flower that gets pretty tall. But when you see these in bloom in a large drift, they are breathtaking. And you get 4 bulbs for $5.42 of the Casablanca Oriental lilies. And colocasia, or elephant ears. Now these are a really pretty foliage plant. They have a very tropical look to them, and the leaves are heart-shaped. They come in different sizes. Now this one you're getting 4 bulbs for $5.42, which means that it's probably not going to be as large as some of the others. They have some bulbs that are called jumbo elephant ears that are almost as big as a softball, and those get ginormous. But they are just a summer annual. They're hardy only to zone 8, and they like part sun 4 to 6 hours. So this is a great part sun plant if you have a more shady garden. And they are hardy in zones 8 through 10, and they can get 36 to 60 inches in height. And because they're foliage, they're going to bloom all season. I find that these also take a little while to get going. So if you want to have this beautiful foliage for the summer, pot up these forms or these bulbs in some potting soil, put them in a sunny window, and get them going before you plant them outside. And some Jackmangi clematis. Clematis like their feet in the shade and their head in the sun. So if you plant them under the foot of some foliage like hosta foliage to keep the roots nice and cool, they are generally a bit happier. There's also different groups of clematis, group 1, 2, or 3, which will tell you when the right time is to prune them. And this Jackmangi is a pretty popular variety. It has a pretty purple bloom, and you get 1 plant for $5.42. And you can see there's already some green growth in there, so it is a viable plant. And because it is perennial, you can plant it out as soon as the ground is workable. If it's thawed and you don't have snow, go for it. They also do like fertilizer. I think they will benefit from a feeding of fertilizer every spring. So when you have it going and growing, usually about year 3 is when they really take off. Go ahead and give it a feeding once a season, and it'll bloom a lot better. They have some more varieties of lilies. They have this, it says pink and light pink. It does look more like a red and pink to me. $9.97 for 14 bulbs. And here's some more of their dahlia varieties. So they have lilac, thyme, and prince of orange, $9.97 for 4 of them. Now, when you're looking for dahlias, again, you don't want to just check the weight of the package. Make sure that they're not too lightweight, because that would mean that the tubers are dehydrated. You want to feel them to make sure they're nice and firm to the touch. Make sure that there's no mold or anything funky growing out of them. And lastly, you want to check for signs of life, like any shoots or eyes starting to form on the tubers. What other varieties do they have here? The Island Sky Mixed. Looks more like one of those cactus style dahlias. Oh, this is Lady Darlene and Babylon Red. And then they also have the Bluebird and Kelvin Floodlight. The Kelvin Floodlight is a really pretty light yellow dahlia. A friend had shared one with me, and I grew it for the first time last year. Super pretty. Another one that's really beautiful is this Creme de Cassis. So this is a mix of Creme de Cassis with Thomas Edison. You get 4 bulbs for $9.97. And this Creme de Cassis is gorgeous. It's a water lily type dahlia. You get a ton of blooms off 1 plant. It has a light pink in the front and then this fuchsia pink on the back of the petals. So pretty. And the Thomas Edison is also a really popular purple variety. So that's a great mix together. And then they have these solar flare mixed, which looks like you get the traditional style dahlia with a cactus style, and royal amethyst mix, which is a pink and purple, and the blue boy and crazy love, which is a more lavender light purple colorway. Here's another really pretty lily mix. You get white and pink lilies, and you get 14 bulbs for $9.97. That's actually a great buy. And then they also have some mixed peonies where you get 3 plants for $9.97. This looks like the Sarah Bernhardt, which is a gorgeous pink, and it is so fragrant. Peonies, most of them have a really great fragrance as well. And if you like colors like yellows and oranges, they also have this mix of the Asiatic lilies. For $9.97, you get 14 bulbs. Some more gladiola. So they have a red and pink mix, 40 bulbs for $9.97. A 4th of July mix, you get 40 bulbs for $9.97. So it looks like you're getting shades of purples and reds and some pinks. Very pretty. And they have some more lilies. These are the Forever mixed lilies. And $9.97, you get 14 bulbs. Orange, and it looks like a burgundy orange. I was starting some more seeds this week and I realized that I didn't have any more sweet pea seeds. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this pack while I'm here, the Early Giganti Mixed Colors. It says that it takes 50 days to bloom. These are pretty hard seeds, so you should soak them for overnight. I would say about 24 hours or so before you plant them out. They do like cool temperatures, so it's a great way to get some blooms in mid to late spring. And they're such a dainty, beautiful flower, but with a wonderful fragrance. So I like to cut some of these and put them in a little bud vase on my windowsill in the kitchen to enjoy. Here's what I'm picking up. The seeds, these bare root globe thistle Vichys blue, and some bones for our pup Rocco. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you on the next one.